The morning sun painted the rocky landscape of Kepler 438b in shades of orange and red. Sergeant Jake Morrison adjusted his helmet and checked his weapon for the third time. The mining colony had been peaceful for months, but the sensors had picked up something strange near the southern ridge, something that did not belong there. Jake looked at his small patrol team. Corporal Lisa Hayes was checking her equipment, with the same care she always showed. Private Danny Clark seemed nervous, which was normal for him on patrol days. Amy Rodriguez, their medic, was making sure her medical kit had everything they might need. These three soldiers had been with Jake for 2 years now, and he trusted them with his life. "Remember, we are just looking around," Jake said as they walked toward their transport vehicle. "The sensors showed some kind of energy reading, but it could be nothing. Stay alert, but do not shoot unless I give the order." The ride to the southern ridge took 30 minutes through rough terrain. The mining colony was built on a planet that had more rocks than trees, more dust than water, but it was rich in metals that Earth needed, so humans had made it their home. The colonists worked hard during the day and slept peacefully at night, knowing that soldiers like Jake kept them safe. When they reached the area where the sensors had detected the strange energy, Jake saw something that made him stop breathing for a moment. A ship unlike anything he had ever seen was crashed into the rocky ground. It was not human-made, that much was clear. The metal looked like it was made from liquid silver that had been frozen in time. Strange symbols covered its surface, and even though parts of it were badly damaged, Jake could see it had been beautiful once. "Holy cow," Danny whispered. "Is that what I think it is?" "An alien ship," Lisa said, raising her weapon. "First contact protocol, everyone." We followed Jake's lead. Jake approached the crashed vessel slowly. There were no signs of movement, no sounds coming from inside. Part of the ship's hull had been torn open, probably during the crash. He could see a faint blue light coming from within, but it was getting weaker as he watched. "Amy, stay close," Jake ordered. "If there are survivors in there, they might need medical help." They climbed through the opening in the hull. Inside, the ship was even more amazing than the outside. The walls seemed to glow with their own light, and the floor felt warm under their boots. But the beautiful interior was ruined by the crash. Broken pieces of equipment lay everywhere, and strange liquids dripped from damaged pipes. In the center of what looked like a command room, Jake found her. She was unlike anything he had ever imagined an alien would look like. Her body seemed to be made of living crystal that caught and reflected light in ways that hurt his eyes to look at directly. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, and her form was graceful even as she lay dying on the floor. What Jake guessed was her face had features that were almost human, but not quite, like someone had tried to carve a person from pure light. "She is still alive," Amy said, kneeling beside the alien. "But barely. Her body temperature is dropping, fast." The alien's eyes opened when she heard Amy's voice. They were like looking into deep pools of starlight. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but Jake could understand the words. "Human soldiers," she said slowly, as if each word cost her great effort. "I did not expect to find your kind here." Jake knelt down beside her. "We are here to help. What happened to your ship?" "My name is Queen Zara," she said, and even dying, there was dignity in her voice. "I rule the Veltharian Empire. Or I did until today. My brother Voss has taken everything from me. He has started a war that will destroy our people." Jake did not know what to say. He was just a sergeant in a small colonial defense force, and here was an alien queen dying in front of him. "We will get you medical help," he said. Queen Zara shook her head slowly. "It is too late for me. But there is something you must know. Something important." Her crystal form flickered like a candle, in the wind. "My daughter, Princess Lyra, she is still alive. Voss has taken her prisoner. He wants to change her mind, make her believe his way is right." "Your daughter?" Jake asked. "She is young, still learning about the world. If Voss succeeds in changing her thoughts, she will become like him. She will lead our people into endless war." Queen Zara's voice was getting weaker. "But if someone could save her, could remind her of what I taught her about peace, she could rebuild our empire the right way." Jake felt something heavy settle in his chest. "You want us to help rescue your daughter?" I cannot ask such a thing, Queen Zara said. Your people have no reason to care about our problems. You do not even know us. But Jake was thinking about his own sister back on Earth, about how he would feel if she was in danger and he could not help her. He was thinking about the pain in this alien queen's voice when she talked about her daughter. Some things were the same no matter what species you were. Where is she? Jake asked. Queen Zara's crystal form brightened slightly. You would consider this? But it would be so dangerous. Voss controls an entire star system. His armies are vast. Where is your daughter? Jake asked again, with effort that clearly caused. Her pain, Queen Zara lifted one arm and touched a small device on her wrist. A holographic map appeared in the air above them, showing star systems and travel routes. Velthar Prime, she whispered, the capital world. She is being held in the Palace of Mines. Jake studied the map, trying to memorize the details. It looked impossibly far away, impossibly well defended, but a promise was a promise. Queen Zara reached into a pocket of what Jake guessed was her clothing and pulled out a small pendant. It glowed with the same soft light as her body. Take this, she said, pressing it into Jake's hand. It carries my royal seal. More importantly, it carries my memories, my love for Lyra. If you can get close enough to her, this might help her remember who she really is. The pendant felt warm in Jake's palm. I promise you, he said, looking into the alien queen's dying eyes. I will find your daughter. I will save her. Queen Zara smiled, and for a moment her whole form glowed brighter. Thank you, human soldier. Your species is more honorable than I dared hope. Those were her last words. The light in her crystal body faded slowly like a sunset until she was still and dark. Jake stood up, the pendant clutched in his fist. Lisa, Danny, and Amy were all staring at him. Sarge, Lisa said carefully, you know we cannot actually do this, right? We are talking about traveling across the galaxy to fight an alien empire. Jake looked down at Queen Zara's body, then at the pendant in his hand. I gave her my word, he said simply. Danny laughed nervously. Come on, Jake. You cannot be serious. It is impossible. But Jake was already thinking, already planning. Amy, can you help me move her body? She deserves a proper burial. He looked at his team, these soldiers who had followed him through 2 years of dangerous missions. And then we are going to figure out how to keep my promise. The 4 humans worked together to carry Queen Zara's body outside into the sunlight of Kepler 438b. As they laid her to rest among the rocks, Jake made his second promise of the day. He would find a way to reach Velthar Prime. He would rescue Princess Lyra, and he would make sure that Queen Zara's sacrifice meant something, even if it killed him. Jake sat in Colonel Patricia Wells' office 3 hours later, still holding Queen Zara's pendant. The debriefing had not gone well. The colonel, a tough woman who had served in 3 colonial conflicts, was staring at him like he had lost his mind. Let me understand this correctly, Sergeant, Colonel Wells said slowly. You want to take a military vessel, travel thousands of light years into unknown space, infiltrate an alien empire, and rescue a prisoner we know nothing about, all because you made a promise to a dying alien. Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. And you think this is a good use of our limited resources? Jake had expected this reaction. The mining colony of Kepler 438b was not a major military installation. They had 3 small transport ships, 200 soldiers, and enough supplies to last maybe 6 months if they were cut off from Earth. Every person and every piece of equipment was precious. Ma'am, I understand this seems crazy, Jake said, but I gave my word. Colonel Wells stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the colony. Jake, you are a good soldier, one of my best. But you are talking about starting an interstellar incident. We do not even know if this Queen Zara was telling the truth. She was dying, Colonel. Why would she lie? Maybe she was not lying, the colonel said. Maybe she believed what she told you, but that does not mean we should risk our entire mission. Here for her family problems. Jake had been thinking about this argument during the walk back to base. What if it is not just her family problems? What if this General Voss really is planning to expand his empire? What if Earth colonies are next on his list? Colonel Wells turned around. Now you are reaching, Sergeant. Am I? Jake pulled out a data pad where he had been studying the star charts Queen Zara had shown him. Look at this, Colonel. The Veltharian Empire controls 37 star systems. Most of them are between us and Earth. If this General Voss wants to expand toward human space, we are right in his path. The Colonel took the data pad and studied it. Jake could see her military mind working, considering the strategic implications. Even if you are right, she said finally, what you are proposing is still suicide. We do not have the ships or the firepower to fight an entire alien empire. We do not need to fight them, Jake said. We just need to get one person out. Colonel Wells sat back down. Jake, I am going to be very clear with you. I cannot authorize this mission. I will not risk colonial resources on what might be a wild goose chase. However, she paused, I also cannot stop you from taking personal leave time. What you do during your leave is your own business. Jake understood. The Colonel was giving him permission without giving him permission. If he succeeded, she could claim the mission was unauthorized. If he failed, she could deny any knowledge of it. Thank you, ma'am, Jake said. Do not thank me yet, Colonel Wells replied. You still need a ship, supplies, and people crazy enough to go with you. Jake left the Colonel's office and went looking for his team. He found Lisa in the armory, cleaning weapons that were already clean. She always did that when she was thinking hard about something. So, Lisa said without looking up, how did the Colonel take your brilliant plan? About as well as expected, Jake sat down beside her. Lisa, I want you to know that I am not ordering anyone to come with me on this. This is completely voluntary. Lisa finally looked at him. Jake, you are my sergeant. More than that. You are my friend. If you think this is important enough to risk your life for, then I trust your judgment. Danny appeared in the doorway. Are we really talking about this? About actually going to another star system to fight? Aliens? Not to fight them, Jake corrected. To rescue someone. Same difference, Danny said, but he was already nodding. Count me in. This colony has been boring anyway. Amy was the hardest to convince. As the team's medic, she thought about risks differently than the others. Jake, she said when he found her in the medical bay. I have seen what happens when soldiers take unnecessary risks. I have patched up too many heroes. I know, Jake said, but this is not about being a hero. This is about keeping a promise. Amy was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed. If you three are going to get yourselves killed on some alien planet, someone needs to be there to keep you alive long enough to regret it. With his team assembled, Jake's next problem was transportation. The colony's ships were all military property, and even with the Colonel's unofficial approval, he could not just take one. He needed to find another way. The answer came from an unexpected source. Tony Kim was a civilian engineer who worked on the mining equipment. He had been listening to the rumors about Jake's crazy mission, and he approached the sergeant in the colony's mess hall. I hear you need a ship, Tony said, sliding into the seat across from Jake. Maybe, Jake replied carefully. I have been working on a personal project, Tony continued. A modified transport vessel. Nothing fancy, but it is fast and has good range. More importantly, it is not military property. Jake was interested. What do you want in return? I want to come with you, Tony said. I have been stuck on this rock for 3 years, fixing the same machines every day. I want to see what else is out there. Jake studied the engineer. Tony was small and quiet, but Jake had seen him solve problems that stumped everyone else. Can you handle yourself in a fight? I hope we do not have to find out, Tony replied. But yes, I can shoot a gun if I have to. The next addition to their team was Susan White, one of the colony's transport pilots. She had a reputation for being able to fly anything with engines, and she had experience running supplies past pirate blockades. When Jake approached her, she just laughed. Finally, she said, a mission that is not completely safe and boring. Their last recruit was Gary Brown, a communications specialist who had been studying alien transmissions as a hobby. If we are going to sneak into alien space, he explained, we are going to need someone who understands their languages and communication protocols. Jake now had a team, but they still needed equipment. The alien empire that Queen Zara had described was far more advanced than anything humans possessed. Their small transport ship would need serious modifications to survive the journey. This problem led Jake to make contact with the Zephyrian traders. The Zephyrians were a neutral alien species that sold advanced technology to anyone with enough credits to pay for it. A Zephyrian merchant ship visited the human colonies every few months, and Jake had heard they would be arriving soon. When the Zephyrian vessel landed at the colony's spaceport, Jake was waiting. The ship's captain, a being called Nyx, who looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, was interested in Jake's request but skeptical about his ability to pay. Cloaking device, upgraded engines, improved shields, Nyx said in accented but understandable English. You are talking about very expensive modifications, human. What do you offer in trade? Jake had thought about this. He had no money, no valuable goods, no rare metals to trade. What he had was his military pension, his personal belongings, and a promise to an alien queen. Everything I own, Jake said, simply. Nyx studied him with large, unblinking eyes. That is not much. It is everything I have, Jake replied. The Zephyrian was quiet for several minutes. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. You humans are strange creatures. You risk everything for abstract concepts like honor and promises. Nyx paused. Very well. Your belongings and military pension will cover half the cost. Your teammates can contribute their savings for the rest. Jake looked at his team. One by one, they nodded. They were willing to give up everything they had worked for to help him keep his promise. 3 days later, Tony's transport ship had been transformed. The cloaking device would hide them from most sensors. The upgraded engines could push them, faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. The improved shields might protect them from alien weapons, at least for a while. As Jake stood in the ship's small cargo bay, looking at Queen Zara's pendant, he realized there was no turning back. Now! They had spent everything they had on this mission. If they failed, they would probably die. If they succeeded, they would still be broke and far from home. Second thoughts? Lisa asked, joining him in the cargo bay. Third and fourth thoughts, Jake admitted. But I made a promise. To a dying alien you had never met before. To a mother who was worried about her daughter, Jake corrected. Some things are universal, Lisa. Gary's voice came over the ship's communication system. Jake, we are getting clearance for departure. Are we really doing this? Jake looked around at his team, these people who had risked everything to help him keep a promise to a stranger. Tony was making final adjustments to the engine. Susan was running through the pre-flight checklist. Amy was securing the medical supplies. Danny was checking their weapons. Gary was monitoring alien communication, channels for any useful intelligence. They were about to attempt something that every rational person would call impossible. They were going to infiltrate an alien empire, rescue a prisoner they had never met, and somehow make it home alive. Yes, Jake said into the communication system. We are really doing this. The ship lifted off from Kepler 438b 30 minutes, later carrying 7 humans toward a promise that might get them all killed. 3 weeks into their journey through space, Jake was beginning to understand why most people called his mission impossible. The Veltharian Empire was vast beyond anything he had imagined. Every day they traveled brought them deeper into Star. Systems controlled by General Voss, and every day the danger grew worse. Their ship, which Tony had named the Promise Keeper, was holding up well. The Zephyrian modifications were working better than expected. The cloaking device kept them hidden from most sensors, and the upgraded engines pushed them faster than Jake had thought possible. But even with their advanced technology, they were still just 7 humans in a small ship, heading toward the most heavily defended planet in known space. Gary had been monitoring alien communications around the clock, and the news was not good. General Voss had declared martial law across the entire Veltharian Empire. Military patrols were everywhere, searching for rebels and dissidents. Anyone caught helping enemies of the state was being executed without trial. It gets worse, Gary said during their morning briefing. I have been listening to broadcasts from Velthar Prime. General Voss is announcing that Princess Lyra will be making public appearances soon. He claims she has seen the wisdom of his methods and supports his new policies. Jake felt his stomach twist. How long until we reach Velthar Prime? 2 more days at current speed, Susan answered from the pilot's seat. But Jake, we have a bigger problem. There is a patrol fleet blocking the main approach to the system. 6 heavy cruisers and at least 20 smaller vessels. Jake studied the tactical display Tony had set up. The patrol fleet was positioned exactly where Queen Zara's star charts said they needed to go. There was no way around it without adding weeks to their journey, and they did not have weeks. If Princess Lyra was being forced to make public appearances, her mental conditioning was probably almost complete. We need a different approach, Jake said. Gary, what have you learned about Veltharian military protocols? Gary pulled up his notes on a portable computer. They are very formal, very hierarchical. Lower-ranking officers never question orders from higher-ranking ones. But Jake, we do not have any way to fake proper credentials. Actually, Amy said quietly, we might. Everyone turned to look at the medic. Amy had been studying Queen Zara's pendant during their journey, trying to understand how it worked. This pendant does not just contain the Queen's memories, Amy explained. It also has her complete royal authorization codes. In Veltharian society, the royal family has absolute authority over the military. Jake felt a spark of hope. You mean we could use it to give orders to their patrol fleet? Theoretically, Amy said, but there are problems. First, we would need to convince them that Queen Zara is still alive. Second, we would need someone who can speak their language perfectly. Third, if they figure out we are lying, they will blow us out of space. Gary raised his hand. I can handle the language part. I have been studying Veltharian linguistics for weeks now. What about convincing them the Queen is alive? Lisa asked. Jake thought about this. We tell them she escaped the attack on her ship. We say she sent us ahead as scouts while she gathers loyal forces from the outer colonies. It was a risky plan, but it was the only one they had. Gary spent the next day practicing Veltharian speech patterns and royal protocols. Amy worked on programming the pendant to transmit the Queen's authorization codes. Tony modified their communication system to match Veltharian frequencies. When they reached the edge of the patrol fleet's sensor range, Jake took a deep breath. Remember, we are Terran mercenaries hired by Queen Zara to gather intelligence on her brother's forces. We have every right to be here. Gary activated the communication system and began speaking in fluent Veltharian. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the authority in Gary's voice. The response came back immediately. Even without understanding the language, Jake could tell the patrol commander was surprised and uncertain. He wants to speak directly to Queen Zara. Gary whispered. I told him she is in deep meditation and cannot be disturbed, but he is not buying it. Jake made a quick decision. Amy, activate the pendant's holographic projector. Amy's hands flew over her controls. A moment later, a 3-dimensional image of Queen Zara appeared in their communication array. The image was based on Jake's memories of the dying queen, but Amy had restored her to full health and royal dignity. Gary spoke again in Veltharian, and this time, Jake heard something different in the patrol commander's response. Respect, maybe even fear. It worked, Gary said with relief. He is giving us safe passage to Velthar Prime, but he wants regular reports on our mission. The patrol fleet parted to let them through, and Jake felt like he could breathe again. But their troubles were far from over. As they approached Velthar Prime, the scale of General Voss's military power became clear. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms, each one larger than any human space station. Patrol ships moved in careful patterns around the system, and Jake counted at least 3 separate fleets in parking orbits. How are we supposed to get past all of that? Danny asked, staring at the tactical display. We do not go past it, Jake replied. We go through it. Gary, contact planetary traffic control. Tell them we need landing clearance for our intelligence mission. The next few hours were the longest of Jake's life. Veltharian traffic controllers asked detailed questions about their mission, their ship, and their credentials. Gary answered everything with confidence, using the royal authorization codes to override any doubts. But Jake knew that one wrong answer could expose them. Finally, they received landing clearance for a commercial spaceport in Velthar Prime's capital city. As their ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, Jake got his first look at an alien world. Velthar Prime was beautiful in a way that made Earth seem plain by comparison. Crystal spires rose from the ground like frozen music, and the whole planet seemed to glow with its own inner light. Flying vehicles moved through the air in graceful patterns, and Jake could see millions of Veltharians going about their daily lives. But there were signs of General Voss's rule everywhere. Military checkpoints blocked major roads, propaganda. Displays showed images of the general in heroic poses. And in the center of the city, Jake could see a massive fortress that could only be the Palace of Mines where Princess Lyra was being held. They landed at the spaceport without incident, but Jake knew the real challenges were just beginning. Getting onto the planet had been hard enough. Getting into the most secure building in the Empire would require a miracle. As they prepared to leave their ship, Amy handed out disguise devices that Tony had built using Zephyrian technology. The devices would make them appear to be Veltharian, civilians to casual observation, but they would not fool close inspection. "Remember," Jake said as they gathered their equipment, "we are tourists here to see the capital city. We are not spies. We are not rebels. We are just curious visitors. If anyone asks detailed questions, let Gary do the talking." The spaceport was crowded with beings from dozens of different species. Jake was relieved to see that many non-Veltharians visited the capital, which would help them blend in. But he also noticed the heavy security presence. Guards were everywhere, and they were checking identification documents carefully. Gary guided them through the spaceport customs checkpoint, using forged documents that Tony had created based on intercepted transmissions. Jake's heart was pounding, but the guards barely glanced at their papers before waving them through. Outside the spaceport, the capital city of Velthar Prime was even more impressive than it had looked from space. The buildings seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies that Jake could feel in his bones. The streets were filled with Veltharians going about their business, and Jake was struck by how normal they looked. They were not monsters or conquerors. They were just people living their lives. But as they made their way toward the city center, Jake began to see the impact of General Voss's rule. Military patrols marched through the streets at regular intervals. Public screens showed propaganda messages about the glory of conquest and the weakness of peaceful societies. And everywhere there were posters showing Princess Lyra standing, beside her uncle supporting his policies. "She looks different," Amy observed, studying one of the posters. Jake had to agree. The Princess Lyra in the propaganda images looked older, harder than he had expected. Her crystal form had the same dull gray tint that Queen Zara's body had shown after death. Whatever General Voss was doing to her in the Palace of Mines, it was working. They found lodging at a small hotel near the government district. The proprietor, an elderly Veltharian named Keth, seemed nervous about taking non-Veltharian guests, but Gary's excellent language skills and a generous payment convinced him to rent them rooms. That evening, as they planned their next moves, Jake stood on the hotel balcony looking toward the Palace of Mines. The fortress was even more intimidating up close, with energy barriers flickering around its walls and guard towers at every corner. Lisa joined him on the balcony. "Any second thoughts about this?" Jake fingered Queen Zara's pendant in his pocket. "Every few minutes," he admitted. "But Lisa, what if it was your daughter in there? What if some alien soldier had promised your dying mother that he would save you?" "I know," Lisa said. The day of the public celebration arrived with ominous gray clouds hanging over Velthar Prime's crystal spires. Jake had spent the morning walking through the capital city, memorizing street layouts and guard positions. The closer he got to the Palace of Mines, the more impossible his mission seemed. The palace was not just a building. It was a fortress within a fortress, surrounded by energy barriers that could stop a tank blast. Guard towers rose from each corner, manned by soldiers, with weapons Jake had never seen before. And somewhere inside those impenetrable walls, Princess Lyra was being held prisoner. Back at their hotel, Jake's team was making final preparations. Tony had spent 2 days building small explosive devices that could disable security systems. Amy had prepared sedatives that would work on Veltharian physiology, based on medical scans she had taken of Queen Zara's body. Gary had programmed communication jammers to block calls for help. Danny and Lisa were checking their weapons for the 100th time. "The plan is simple," Jake said, reviewing their strategy one more time. During the celebration, when everyone is focused on the speeches, Tony and Gary will disable the palace's power grid from the underground utility tunnels. The blackout will last maybe 10 minutes before backup systems come online. Susan, who would be waiting with their ship at an emergency landing site outside the city, confirmed her position through their encrypted radio. "I will be ready for immediate pickup," she said. "But remember, once you go into that palace, you are on your own." Jake nodded. "Lisa and I will use the confusion to enter the palace through the service entrance that Keth told us about." The elderly hotel proprietor had turned out to be a secret supporter of Queen Zara, and he had provided detailed information about the palace's layout. "Amy and Danny will create a diversion at the main gate to draw security away from our entry point." It was not a perfect plan. There were too many variables, too many things that could go wrong, but it was the only chance they had. As evening approached, the central plaza began filling with thousands of Veltharians. Jake and his team split up, taking positions around the square. From his hiding spot in an alley near the palace, Jake could see the platform where General Voss would be speaking. General Voss appeared exactly at sunset, and Jake got his first look at the alien who had caused so much suffering. He was larger than most Veltharians, with crystal formations that looked like armor growing from his body. When he spoke, his voice carried across the plaza without amplification, and Jake could hear the arrogance in every word. Gary's translation came through Jake's earpiece. "He is talking about glorious victories and the expansion of the Empire. He says the old ways of peace were weakness, and only through strength can the Veltharians claim their rightful place in the galaxy." The crowd cheered, but Jake noticed that many of the cheers sounded forced. Not everyone in the plaza was happy about General Voss's rule. Then Princess Lyra appeared on the platform, and Jake's heart sank. The young alien woman looked nothing like her mother. Where Queen Zara had been graceful and luminous, Princess Lyra appeared brittle and cold. Her crystal form had the same dull gray color that Jake had seen in Queen Zara's final moments. When she spoke, her words were flat and emotionless. Gary translated her speech. "She is saying that she supports her uncle's policies completely. She says the peaceful ways of her mother were foolish, and that only through conquest can the Veltharian people achieve greatness." Jake felt sick. What if they were too late? What if the mental conditioning had already destroyed everything that Queen Zara had loved about her daughter? But he had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. "Tony, Gary, start the blackout," Jake said into his radio. 2 minutes later, every light in the palace went dark. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Emergency alarms began blaring, and palace guards rushed toward the main security stations. In the plaza, General Voss was shouting orders while his bodyguards formed a protective circle around him and Princess Lyra. Jake and Lisa moved quickly through the confusion, reaching the service entrance just as Tony had predicted. The electronic locks had failed with the power, and Lisa's lockpicking skills got them through the mechanical backup in less than 30 seconds. Inside the palace, emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the crystal walls. Jake could hear guards running through the corridors, but most of them were heading toward the main areas where they expected an attack to come from. Using Keth's information, Jake and Lisa navigated through a series of maintenance tunnels toward the Palace of Mines. The deeper they went, the more disturbing the place became. Jake could hear sounds coming from behind locked doors, sounds that might have been machinery or might have been something worse. "Jake," Lisa whispered as they reached the entrance to the detention level. "What if we find more prisoners down there? What if Princess Lyra is not—" Susan's ship lifted off from Velthar Prime just as General Voss's forces surrounded the landing site. Alien fighters pursued them through the planet's atmosphere, but the Zephyrian modifications held up under fire. Within minutes, they had escaped into open space, but Jake knew their troubles were far from over. Lisa lay unconscious in the ship's small medical bay, while Amy worked frantically to stop the bleeding. The alien weapon had caused damage that human medical training had not prepared Amy to handle, and Lisa's condition was getting worse by the hour. Princess Lyra spent the journey to Nethar 7 monitoring communications from across the Veltharian Empire. The civil war that her broadcast had triggered was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Entire star systems were choosing sides, and battles were already being fought between loyalist and rebel fleets. "I did not want this," Princess Lyra said quietly as she watched reports of fighting on a dozen different worlds. Mother always taught me that violence should be the last option, never the first. Jake was sitting beside Lisa's bed, holding her hand and watching her pale face. Sometimes violence finds us whether we want it or not, he said. Your uncle left you no choice. But so many people are dying because of my decision to broadcast that message. Jake looked at the young alien princess. In the 3 days since they had rescued her from the Palace of Mines, she had shown remarkable strength and wisdom, but she was still young, still learning to carry the weight of leadership. Your mother died trying to prevent a war, Jake said. If you had stayed silent, if you had let your uncle continue his rule, how many more people would have died in his conquest campaigns? Sometimes the right choice is also the hardest choice. Princess Lyra nodded slowly, but Jake could see the burden of responsibility weighing on her. They reached Nethar 7 2 days later, and Jake was relieved to find that the outer colony had remained loyal to the royal family. The local governor, an elderly Veltharian named Commander Thess, welcomed Princess Lyra with tears of joy. Your Highness, Commander Thess said, bowing deeply, we feared you were lost forever. The Empire has been in chaos since your uncle announced your mother's death. Princess Lyra accepted the welcome with grace, but her first priority was getting medical help for Lisa. The Veltharian doctors on Nethar 7 had more advanced equipment than anything Amy had access to, and they were able to stabilize Lisa's condition. She will live, the chief medical officer told Jake. But she needs surgery that we cannot perform here. She must get to a major medical facility within the next few days. Jake felt relief wash over him. Lisa would survive. But getting her to proper medical care meant traveling through a galaxy that was now at war. Over the next week, as Lisa slowly recovered, Jake watched Princess Lyra transform from a rescued prisoner into a true leader. She established a new government based on the peaceful principles her mother had taught her, and she began reaching out to worlds that were still undecided in the Civil War. I want to offer an alternative to my uncle's way, she explained to Jake one evening as they stood on the colony's observation deck looking out at the stars. Not just military conquest, but cooperation and trade. Not just taking from other species, but learning from them. Jake was impressed by her vision, but he was also worried about the practical challenges she faced. Princess, you have the moral authority to lead your people, but your uncle has most of the military forces. How do you plan to win this war? Princess Lyra smiled, and for a moment Jake could see her mother's grace in her expression. The same way your people would win it, Sergeant, with determination, creativity, and allies. She was right about allies. Word of the human soldiers who had rescued the princess was spreading throughout the Veltharian Empire, and Jake was surprised to learn that many aliens viewed humans with new respect. A small, supposedly primitive species had accomplished what no one thought possible. More importantly, other alien species were taking notice. The Zephyrian traders announced that they would provide advanced technology to Princess Lyra's forces at reduced prices. The peaceful Altarian Republic offered diplomatic support. Even some worlds within General Voss's own territory began secretly switching sides. But the war was far from over. General Voss still controlled the Empire's capital and its most powerful military units. His forces had superior numbers and better equipment, and he was not the type of leader who would surrender easily. The crisis came 3 weeks after their arrival on Nethar 7. General Voss launched a massive offensive, targeting worlds that had declared loyalty to Princess Lyra. His strategy was simple: crush the rebellion quickly before it could gain momentum. Jake watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Princess, you are outnumbered 3-1. Your forces cannot win a direct military confrontation. Then we will not fight a direct confrontation, Princess Lyra replied. We will fight the way humans would fight. We will use our advantages, knowledge of the local terrain, support from the civilian population, and the willingness to take risks that our enemies would consider crazy. She was learning, Jake realized. Princess Lyra was applying human tactical thinking to alien warfare, and the results were surprising everyone. Instead of trying to defend fixed positions, her forces used hit-and-run tactics that confused General Voss's commanders. Instead of fighting conventional battles, they disrupted supply lines and communication networks. Instead of trying to hold territory, They focused on winning the support of civilian populations. The strategy worked better than anyone had expected. Within a month, General Voss's seemingly unstoppable offensive had stalled. His forces were spread thin across dozens of worlds, chasing enemies who refused to stand and fight. But the turning point came when Princess Lyra made a decision that shocked both sides of the conflict. "I want to offer amnesty to any of my uncle's forces who surrender," she announced during a council meeting. "Not just the ordinary soldiers, but the officers and commanders as well." Jake was skeptical. "Princess, these people have been trying to kill you for months. Why would you trust them?" "Because my mother taught me that mercy is stronger than vengeance," Princess Lyra replied. "If I execute my uncle's supporters, I become the same kind of leader he was. But if I show them that there is another way to live, some of them might choose to follow it." The amnesty offer had an immediate impact. Entire fleets began switching sides, bringing their ships and crews with them. Officers who had been fighting for General Voss out of fear or duty suddenly had a reason to support Princess Lyra. General Voss's empire began to crumble from within. The final battle took place in orbit around Velthar Prime, where General Voss had gathered the last of his loyal forces for a desperate last stand. Princess Lyra's fleet, now larger than her uncle's despite having started with almost nothing, moved to reclaim the capital world. Jake was aboard Princess Lyra's flagship, serving as a military advisor. Lisa, finally recovered from her injuries, was back at his side. As they watched the tactical display, Jake marveled at how much had changed since that day when he had found a dying alien queen in a crashed ship. "Your Highness," the fleet commander reported. "General Voss is requesting a private communication channel." Princess Lyra nodded. "Put him through." General Voss's image appeared on the main screen, and Jake was shocked by how much the alien had aged in the past few months. The arrogant conqueror had been replaced by a tired, defeated leader who knew his cause was lost. "Lyra," General Voss said, and his voice was softer than Jake had ever heard it. "I suppose you have come to arrest me for treason." "I have come to offer you the same amnesty I offered everyone else," Princess Lyra replied. "Uncle, you are still family. Mother would have wanted me to forgive you." For a moment, Jake thought General Voss might accept the offer, but then the alien general's expression hardened. "I cannot live in a galaxy where strength is considered weakness," he said. "I cannot accept a universe where peaceful species are allowed to exist alongside warrior races. Your way will lead to the destruction of our people." "Then I am sorry," Princess Lyra said gently. "But I cannot let you continue to hurt innocent people." The battle that followed was brief. General Voss's remaining forces, outnumbered and demoralized, surrendered quickly. Only the general himself refused to give up, choosing to go down fighting, rather than accept defeat. Princess Lyra mourned her uncle's death, even though he had tried to destroy everything she believed in. He was wrong, she told Jake after the battle, but he was still family. The coronation ceremony took place a month later on Velthar Prime. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including a delegation from Earth led by Colonel Wells. Jake was amazed to see his former commanding officer walking through alien palaces as if she did such things every day. "Sergeant Morrison," Colonel Wells said with a smile, "I believe you have some explaining to do. When I gave you permission to take personal leave, I did not expect you to start an interstellar war." "It seemed like a good idea at the time, ma'am," Jake replied. Princess Lyra, now Queen Lyra, had kept her promise to rebuild the Veltharian Empire based on peaceful principles. She established trade agreements with human colonies, shared advanced medical technology that saved countless lives, and created a new model for cooperation.